Hello guys, welcome to another weekly breakdown video. As you can see here, as it is named weekly breakdown video, I always start from the weekly to decide my weekly bias throughout the week, what I am looking for, buys or sells. But I am like water in the markets. I adapt to the market conditions like Bruce Lee adapts in his fighting. As you can see, going on to next week, my bias was clearly bullish according to how this candle closed. And this candle, the market is not having a clear trend for weeks, and then NFP report came in and the market is bullish now. News decides the direction of the market. 100% true. The market was consolidating, choppy, going up, down, ranging for like 5 weeks, right? Throughout 5 weeks the market was ranging, and then suddenly NFP report came in, and NFP report literally gave the trend for the market, which is bullish. So going on next week, my bias was bullish. And let me show you all the callouts one by one. This demand zone was respected in the weekly time frame, 100%. This was the weekly demand zone which caused this break of structure, market structure shift, fair value gap. So it was a strong demand on the weekly, and after coming back, the market has respected this demand and gave us a huge bullish candle and gave us the weekly bias for next week, right? Whereas, and these callouts are for trades that I will show you afterwards. Trading daily bias is also very profitable if you adapt to the market and do it correctly. Why I have written this, I will show you in the if you stay in the video, you will get to know why I have written this. It is very important. Even if your bias is bullish, yeah, if on the daily time frame huge selling is happening days after days after days and the fundamentals are aligning, you can look for sales, mate. So on weekly I was looking for buys. Weekly bias was bullish on GU, whereas weekly bias will be bearish on DXY because they are internally correlated, as we know. So weekly, after closing like this, it also engulfed the previous 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candles, bro. One candle engulfed the previous 5 candles, so it was a very, very good confluence that it might continue next week, might continue going to the downside, or at least we can catch some beautiful sells on DXY, whereas buys on GBP USD. So that was my weekly analysis, simple as that. And if we are bullish, my target will be this draw of liquidity in GU, and on DXY, let me show you quickly. And on DXY, my target will be this draw of liquidity to the downside. Those are the only things I mark in the weekly time frame. Whereas now let me show you the daily bias and the trades. No time wasting. As we can see, the market has now broke structure on the daily time frame from this demand right there. This was the change of character somewhere around here, lower highs, lower lows, higher highs, and after that the market was just ranging, choppy, and now it has broken structure to the upside. Whereas GBP USD has broken structure to the upside, then also DXY has changed character to the downside. Now it has genuinely changed character, bro. So it's a very strong confluence, and also the market has a lot to rebalance. The market can rebalance before continuing up. We know that, as we know this concept through sales course, that the rebalance of price, something like this, right? And that helps us a lot. So going on Monday, my bias is bullish. Let me show you quickly. After seeing a Friday candle closure like this, going on Monday, my bias was bullish. And also there was no news on Monday. As you can see, it is not that clear, but on Monday there was no news. So what I did, I went to 4-hour time frame to look for price action. And on DXY, I will only show you the daily bias. On DXY, my daily bias was bearish for Monday, because until and unless the market shows me that it's rejecting, I don't consider it. Yeah, there might be a fair value gap here, but until and unless the price shows it's getting respected, I don't consider it. So this was the demand on H4. There was a fair value gap here, the fair value gap here. So now we go to the H1 to look for the price action, market structure, higher low, higher high, higher low, and if the market did something like this, the change of character will happen to the downside, something like that. On Monday I was looking for buys, so let me show you quickly. Monday I was looking for buys, right? So I will wait for the Asian range to close, and I was looking for buys from this sort of M30 demand zone right here. there was a demand zone, the closest demand zone according to the Asian range. As you know, I adapt to the Asian range zones according to the Asian range. There was a H1 fair value gap, M30 demand zone. So I was looking for buys, but what the price did, it didn't go down, but actually it gave us a continuation setup. Let me show you quickly. And continuation setups I take it on the M15 fair value gaps, as you know, as you guys know by now. So this was a continuation setup. There was no fair value gaps here. There was one fair value gap that I could spot there, and the trend was so strong that I considered taking the trade with a 10 pip stop loss and 1:2 risk to reward, and which was a winner. But I at least need a 1:3 risk to reward to consider that trade as a winner. So this was, I will consider this as a break-even trade, right? So after how this candle closed on Monday, I was looking for buys, as you guys know, I have told you already. So going on Tuesday, it was a continuation setup on Monday. Going on Tuesday, right? Now what's this is when you have to be like water in the markets. Your weekly bias is bullish. Monday you were looking for buys, but what did Monday do? Monday gave us a bearish pin bar from this sort of supply on the daily time frame, respecting this supply, filling up that fair value gap, filling up this fair value gap, respecting this supply right here. So what we will do now is we will adapt to the market. There is a fair value gap, right? There is a fair value gap that the market can fill right here. So what I will do going on Tuesday, I will anticipate the market is making a higher low on H1, as it has already broken structure to the upside, higher highs, and we know the daily makes higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, right? So we will anticipate a quick higher low, fill up this fair value gap, and then continue heading towards the upside. So looking at that, my bias now changed to bearish. Weekly is still bullish, obviously. The trades that will be aligned with the weekly will be stronger than the trade which I'm gonna take now, but it is so certain that this fair value gap needs to get filled, and we know that fair value gaps do get filled. Even on DXY is aligning 100% with GBP USD. So what I do now is, obviously I will look for sells going on. I will look for sells going on Tuesday. Simple as that. And on the 4 hourly, this was the low that caused this high. And let me show you one more thing which gave me more confluence. This is Monday, Tuesday. Okay, so let me do this. On Monday, the 4 hour also changed character to the downside. Clearly you can see highs, lows, higher highs, lower lows. So until and unless the 4 hour shows us change of character, at least the 4 hour or the daily, I don't consider the trade, right? But in this case, the previous week high was swept early on, and the change of character happened to the downside on the 4 hour. And also this fair value gap can get filled. So many things aligning together to tell us that now the market has higher probability of going down rather than going up. Because even though the bias is bullish, we are not stuck to one bias. Obviously I will adapt. So it made sense to go down from here. So what I did, going on Tuesday, I was looking for sells. Also looking at the price action, 4 hour change character to the downside, and the hourly also change character to the downside somewhere around here. The hourly change character here, somewhere around here, but I have not marked that. The hourly supply, obviously if I'm looking for sales, I will look for sales from supply zone, right? This was the hourly supply I was looking for sales, and let me show you. That was the previous day high, this was the previous day low. So the previous day low was swept very early on, as you can see here. This is the previous day low right here. And if I show you this trade, even this trade was a continuation, I believe. Yep. And also don't stuck to the price action on the one time frame. Always adapt and look at the different time frames. Do your top down analysis. 100% true. You have to look at the price action on 4 hour, hourly, daily, every time frame. M30, M15. Until M15 you have to look at price action in every time frame, because every time frame has different story to tell, bro. Maybe hourly is bullish, maybe 4 hourly is bearish, but the hourly has changed character to the upside and your bias is now shifting to the upside. You get, like, if you the lower the time frames, the change of characters happens on lower time frame first, and then the higher time frames continue while the reversal is happening, right? That's why we trade the M15 rejection rather than H1, but the H1 rejections are more stronger. I have also noticed that. And yeah, while taking continuation setup, wait for the price to enter the M15 fair value gap, and if the fair value gap is not respected, it has higher probability it can be respected afterwards, 100%. And also this trade was purely based on filling the daily fair value gap. Yes, my bias, I selected my bias purely on basis of the daily fair value gap, of that fair value gap getting filled. So going on Tuesday, my bias was bearish, as I've told you a gazillion of times. And the Asian high, look at this. Obviously, if I want to sell, I want the Asian high to get swept, right? But in this case, ask yourself, use your brain. The whole day, the market just went down, 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 making lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. Does it make sense for the market or the price to go all the way up to the H1 supply and then come again? No, bro. That's why this is the reason I was looking for sells, continuation setups. I adapted to the market. I took a loss here, and again the second trade was a winner. So overall it was a winning day. Continuation setup do work. If you are taking a continuation setup, take it in M15 fair value gaps. I have seen beautiful results there. So on Tuesday it was a continuation setup, it was a winner. And now let me show you the bias for Wednesday. Going on Wednesday, my bias was not clear because look, GBP USD still had this much fair value gap to fill, right, on daily, whereas DXY has already filled so much of fair value gap, and also it was rejecting this here. The market went up and it's giving a wick. It's giving a wick showing that now it is rejecting from that to continue to the downside. But it was not clear because it was also giving a rejection, but this was not enough for me to continue to look for buys because still this much fair value gap was left on GU. So what I did on Wednesday, I was not looking for anything, and also there was no news. This was a very good week to trade, to be honest. There was very little news throughout the week, and also not that high probabilities of a news. On Wednesday there was news, which was GBP BOE Gorman Bailey speaks, Treasury current report, and Fed Chair Powell speech. Fed Chair Powell speech is also a very high probability news, whereas on the 4 hourly the market is now bearish. So looking at the daily bias, looking for sales will be more ideal in this kind of situations, but obviously I don't predict the markets, I adapt to the conditions in the market. So also the previous day high is this one, the previous day low is here. So let me show you. This was the previous day low. Going on Wednesday, my bias was not clear, so I decided not to trade. And if I had traded, I would look for sells from some sort of this zone, but this was not clear. So not trading, sometimes not trading is better than trading, bro. Whenever your bias is not clear, don't trade, wait for the price to play out, and then the price will give you the bias for the next day. Saving your capital in trading is also a skill, bro. Not trading on Wednesday literally gave me my bias for Thursday. Let me show you how. Now on Thursday, the daily fair value gap has been filled. Now this is a bullish pin bar. Here this candle was not as strong of a rejection because still the sellers were there, bro. Still the sellers were there, currently present in the markets. But now after seeing this Wednesday candle filling up this fair value gap, now it's clearly showing that now the sellers are losing momentum, the fair value gap is getting filled, and now it might continue going to the upside with the weekly bias being bullish. Also on DXY it was a very clean. Now this is the rejection we want to see. This is not the rejection we like, bro. This is still bullish. This candle, still bulls are stronger, but in this candle we can see this daily fair value gap has totally got filled, and now it is giving a pure bullish pin bar, bearish pin bar, and showing the bears are entering the market, as well as the contrary will happen on GU. That means the bulls are entering the market. And in this case, obviously if I want to look for buys, I want the change of character to the upside, right? But the 4 hourly didn't change character to the upside, so there was no use, or there was no chance of us looking for buys. But I look for buys in this case because the hourly changed character. The hourly was making lower highs and lower lows, market structure was bearish. Here it changed character to the upside. This was the low that caused this high. Also the change of character, previous day low was swept, and the previous day low was here. Previous day high will be our targets, obviously going on Thursday. So if just because the weekly bias was already bullish, I also considered the H1 change of character to take the trades. You have to be in sync with the markets. While analyzing the markets, analyze every time frames. If you are looking for buys, obviously look for change of characters in H4, H1, right? So if your bias is bearish, you have to look for change of characters to the downside, and vice versa. So going on Thursday, my bias was bullish. I was looking for some sort of buys from this area, and this was the low that caused this high. This fair value gap was filled to the T, so also this would be a higher low on the H1 to continue with the higher time frames to make a higher high. So everything was so clean. Literally this trade was so perfect. This trade was a class setup, and my targets for the day was also not taken early on. The previous day high, which was also a very green signal, to be honest, the targets for the day was also not taken, whereas now I will look for buys from some sort of 30 minutes. This trade I have already made a video. If you want to see, I have made a separate video. It was a very good setup from this H1 demand zone, and also the DXY correlation in this trade was beautiful. First the market made the move, gave the inducement, and then pretty much gave us the buy. The Asian low liquidity was swept, and also the Asian high liquidity was swept. There was equal highs here to target in the markets. We know that equal highs are contains very high liquidity, and also this previous day high was here, so it was a very good trade. It caught a 1:3, and pretty much we could have caught the same on New York session. Obviously there are two sessions to trade, New York and London. If you miss the London, you can also trade the New York, and this was what I was trying to show you guys. But looking at Thursday, now on Wednesday I was looking for buys, which we got our move. We are out of the markets now. What happens afterwards doesn't matter. Now we will again adapt to the market. Now also this GBP USD fair value gap has been filled, and now it's approaching this sort of demand zone on the daily, right? So now going on Friday, what I will do, my bias will again shift to bearish because of how this daily bias closed, because we adapt to the market, we don't predict. I can't stress the fact, I can't stress the importance of this fact. If you adapt to the condition in the market, bro, that is what you want to do as a trader. So going on Friday, literally my bias was bullish on DXY, and if I am bullish, I am targeting this. I am targeting the stop loss of sellers from last Friday, and also there is a new day opening gap, and we know that the gaps do get filled somewhere in future. So there was a new day opening gap on DXY to target, and on GBP USD there was demand zones, and also this was my draw of liquidity from Friday. So what I will do now is look for sells. Going on Friday, I will look for sells. So to look for sells, I will have to look for supply zones, change of characters, right? So on the H1, this was a low that caused this high, and this was the last low that caused this high. So this was the change of character. This was the supply zone. Pretty much this was the supply zone that I was looking for trade on Friday, this H1 supply zone. Now let me play the price for you. Literally when the market opened, it literally went down. So in that case, what we do, it doesn't make sense. Does it make sense to come all the way up to this supply and then make the move? No, bro. You have to use your own brain that God has given you, and literally wait for the Asian high to close, Asian range to close, and according to the Asian range, you have to decide your bias. You have to decide your zones that you want to trade with your higher time frame bias. The key word here is the higher time frame. If you are trading with the higher time frame with your bias, bro, this was the fair value gap on the M30 or M15, you can say. And there was also news on Friday, GDP news. So it was a very low probability day to trade, and also there was inducement. Makes our trade even stronger, as we know. And pretty much this was a winner trade on Friday, but this trade was a very low probability because there was news, and also it was not an ideal trade because it was a fair value gap trade, right? If this happened somewhere around here, this M15 supply was so clean. There was a market structure shift, huge fair value gap. If something like this happened, would have been better, but it is what it is. And this was a beautiful week, to be honest. After I have started backtesting, this is one of the best weeks that I have done, to be honest. The draw of liquidity was also taken, as you can see, and after sweeping that draw of liquidity, now the market is bearish. So going on next week, my bias will be a little bit shaky because the market went up, came down, anything can happen. So I have to wait for Monday. In this situation, these are the situations when we wait for Monday to close to decide our bias, because our weekly bias is not clear.